Dobar dan, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. A very warm welcome to you all. I'm David Landsman, the chairman of the British-Serbian Chamber of Commerce, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to the first in our series of webinars on the Serbian ICT and Fintech sectors, focusing on opportunities to work with the British market. And this is a new venture for us, and it's a sector which we are absolutely delighted to be highlighting this year. Well, of course, the last year or so has been very difficult for all of us. It's really gratifying to see that Serbia and Britain are among the top countries in Europe for COVID vaccinations, a real British-Serbian success story, but we've all got, of course, quite a long way still to go. But on the Serbia-British front, we at the BSCC really feel we've got some positive news. The continuity trade agreement between our two countries was signed on the 19th of April, and that will ensure preferential trade between our two countries much along the same lines as before Britain left the European Union. But it's much more than just a bit of administration, a corrective measure, restoring the status quo. The fact that our two countries have reached this agreement demonstrates the will between the two governments to work together more closely on our economic relationship. And it's also reflected very much in the strong interest we at the Chamber have been seeing over the last year or two from businesses in both Serbia and the UK across quite a range of sectors, from minerals to organic food to infrastructure and, of course, ICT. British companies sometimes ask me about Serbia and ask me, why Serbia? And I say, you don't have to take our word for it. You don't have to believe the Chamber of Commerce. Just look at all the German, Italian, Chinese and other companies that have developed very successful relationships in Serbia, and ask them about the opportunities, and just ask the British and Serbian companies who are members of our chamber, and that's a growing group, and we're going to hear from some of them later on today. This focus for us in these webinars, of course, is going to be ICT. It's not a sector that is directly affected very much by the trade agreement. That's trading goods rather than services. But as we're going to hear today, there is an amazing amount of business already between the two countries, and it's growing at quite a rate. And to discuss the opportunities, what's there now, what we see in the future, and why, I'm delighted to have with us today Andrew Wrobel, the founding partner of Emerging Europe and the lead for Tech Emerging Europe Advocates. Andrew, welcome.
Thank you very much, David. It's a great pleasure to be here and to join this seminar.
It's great to see you, and it's great to be, for us in the Chamber, to be working with Emerging Europe. Perhaps you could start by introducing yourself and your connections with Serbia. What do you think of when Serbia is mentioned?
Well, you know, my very first visit to Serbia was pretty much 20 years ago, which was a very long time ago, when I was driving from Budapest over to Athens, and a Serbian friend of mine said, perhaps, you know, don't stop in Serbia, perhaps just go straight to, you know, to Greece. But since then, a lot has changed, and I've been to the country, I've visited the country quite a number of times, including actually last year. Believe it or not, but the very last trip before lockdown was actually to Belgrade to speak at a conference that was about e-government and digitalization of public services. But you know, over the years, I've had a chance to speak to a lot of different government officials, but also investors, specifically Western investors. Take the most recent one with Continental, which has an R&D center in Serbia, and I can clearly say that that Serbia is a country to definitely look at.
Yeah, well, I can say that my last trip before the lockdown was also to Belgrade, so that we've got something more in common. We've got the right focus, both of us, clearly. Numbers aren't everything, but there are some really quite impressive statistics, and I know you've come up with some of them, and that there are a few others about. Serbia's the second in terms of talent in ICT in the region, among about 30 odd countries, I think. Globally, it's the 31st in terms of the size of its software exports, which is really quite something. It's there are a few larger countries in Serbia around, so 31st is not bad globally. And I see this morning from the news, there's a report saying that high-tech exports from Serbia, as a big category, goes beyond ICT, but high-tech exports have grown 15 times in the last 15 years. So this is not the image that everyone in the UK will have of Serbia, but it's those figures, those three figures, 2, 31, and 15 times, really quite impressive. So I suppose the question I'd like to ask you is kind of why? Which areas does Serbia have a particular advantage in? I mean, that might be a good place to start.
I think, over the last 10 years where I've been involved in the IT sector, and I've tried to, promote what is happening across Central and Eastern Europe, it's been very difficult to actually see what is really happening. And last year we decided to run a thorough research project, the future of IT in emerging Europe. And we produced a competitiveness index where we looked at different components that play a role in defining the potential of the sector. And we looked at talent, and I have to say that Serbia actually ranked seventh in the overall ranking or index, but second in the talent component. And I mean, that if you look, just like you said, there are quite a few bigger countries around Serbia. Take Poland, which is, the region's, Eastern Europe's biggest economy. And yet Poland was not second. Serbia was only second to Estonia. And what is really, I think, important is when you look at the number of IT students per 100,000 inhabitants, this is where only Estonia is slightly better than Serbia. Serbia has 325 students per 100,000 inhabitants, which is the best, the second best result in the region. But of course, it's not only talent; it's also the development of certain areas such as blockchain. Take the law, the regulations that have changed recently in that domain, but also the development of the sector itself. Take I mentioned at the beginning the e-government solutions and digitalization of public services. This is an area that Serbia can definitely boast about. In fact, in 2019, one of the projects, I think it's called e-Kancelaria, if I'm pronouncing it correctly in Serbian, won an Emerging Europe Award in the Innovation Initiative of the Year. So, there are these elements, but there is also, things like gaming, which is definitely a sector that has to be looked at when you consider Serbia.
I think that's fascinating. So what we can perhaps sum up in admittedly not very technical language, but we've got here kind of best practice and inspiration from Serbia, full of ideas, and it's not those stereotypes we all had about various countries that all they do is cheap data processing. I mean, that's a generation back, if not more by now. And if you want ideas, if you want innovation, regulatory innovation, effective platforms, you can come to Serbia for them. I think second to Estonia in any area of IT is not a bad place to be. So I think that's I'm almost inclined, I mean, I don't want anyone to go away, we've got a fascinating panel to come, but I'm almost inclined to say, if you don't remember anything else, remember you're talking about a country here which can be proud if you're second to Estonia. you can be pretty proud of where you are in this area.
But I think I would like to relate to what you said about this sort of low cost element, and I think it's time we stopped mentioning this aspect, because most of emerging European countries have stopped being low cost destinations. It happened a long time ago. So right now, what we need to be looking at is value for money. So great quality, maybe a bit cheaper, but definitely, great quality from emerging Europe or from Serbia.
I think that's right. I mean, I do think it's important to mention it in order to knock it out, because otherwise there's always that risk. People go away saying, well, yeah, they're being very nice, but actually what they're talking about is just a cost advantage, not a quality advantage. Actually, we've definitely got a quality advantage there. I think one of the really exciting things I've noticed, and we'll be coming to this a bit later on too, I happen to think, but is that there are Serbian companies, not just in Serbia, but moving out, expanding internationally as well. I wonder if you can say something about that.
Well, I mean, this is an interesting topic, because when I've been looking at companies from the emerging Europe region, I have to honestly say that I haven't heard a lot of pitches from Serbian companies. So, you have a lot of Ukrainian companies talking about their value proposition, about Polish companies, about Romanian companies, Belarusian as well. But when it comes to Serbia, you don't hear, unfortunately, you don't hear that much about Serbian IT in the UK. And I think, there are two things that I would definitely advise here. And the first thing would be on the sort of company level, and then on the sort of country level. When it comes to the company level, even last week I was invited on LinkedIn by a business development manager from a Serbian IT company to connect. And I was really interested in his approach. So he basically, decided to connect with me. But when I asked him what he wanted specifically, he said, "Oh, maybe you could just look at our company." So I think you have to be more engaging. You have to engage and build this trust before trying to, perhaps sell something or pitch something. On the national level, I think, when you look at countries like Bulgaria, and this is pretty much a neighbor of Serbia, the country was an outsourcing destination for the Global Sourcing Association in 2016 already. So this is 5 years ago, and a lot of companies from a lot of countries from our region have won this title since then. I think Serbia should definitely be more visible in the UK, and perhaps get engaged with various associations such as the Global Sourcing Association, which is the leading organization in the UK when it comes to outsourcing and services. I know that perhaps the word outsourcing is not liked by everyone, but it definitely helps to position the country.
Andrew, that's a splendid note. Thank you for saying that Serbian companies need to get themselves better known in the UK. That is exactly what the British-Serbian Chamber of Commerce is there for. We have an excellent team in both Belgrade and in London. And I know my colleague will be putting on the chat details of how you can get in touch with us if that's what you want to do, and we very much hope you will. But I think that's very interesting, because you're saying there's a great force here in terms of Serbian IT, which is perhaps not as well known as it is. So that's an invitation also to those from the UK who are listening to get to know Serbia a bit more, because you're going to be very pleasantly surprised if you don't know already. And the rest of this webinar and the following webinars will help you do just that. And we at the Chamber would love to be a connection for you between Serbia and the UK. Andrew, would you like to leave us with a final thought on where we should be looking for these collaborations?
I think I would like to say that we need to be continually feeding the UK market with information about the developments in the ICT sector in Serbia, because that needs to be a constant action. It cannot be just a one-off, but I know that with these webinars, there's already a step forward in that direction. So I'm glad that this is happening, because it's time for British companies to learn more about ICT opportunities in Serbia.
Well, I'm delighted we're doing it too, and delighted that we've had you, Andrew, with us to help launch the series. Thank you very much indeed, and I look forward to continuing the collaboration between the Chamber of Commerce and Emerging Europe. Thank you.
Thank you very much,
Andrew. Now it's time for us to get into a bit more detail in a splendid panel discussion that we have for you this afternoon. And for that, I'd like to hand over to Filip Bankovic, the CTO, Chief Technology Officer and Executive Director International for Roaming Networks. Roaming Networks are a relatively new member of the British-Serbian Chamber of Commerce, a very dynamic member, a very dynamic business, which exemplifies everything we've been talking about so far. So, Filip, welcome, over to you.
Thank you, David. Thank you for the kind words, and thank you to both you and Andrew for the splendid 15 minutes. You've shown what can be done in less than a quarter of an hour. A very warm welcome to all our attendees from a very warm Belgrade today. Welcome to our webinar, the new business opportunities in ICT and digital economy sector here in Serbia, where we would like to present in more detail how we see things and we see opportunities for the future cooperation between the two countries. My name is Filip Bankovic. I'm the CTO and Executive Director for International Markets at Roaming Networks, a Serbian system integrator company with global mindset, working across European markets and in US, and very soon in the cinema next to you, that is in the UK. It is my absolute privilege and an honor really to be hosting and moderating today's event. We'll be trying to showcase to you why we firmly believe that Serbia can be the right cup of tea for the UK investors when it comes to the high-tech domain and ICT technologies. And in order to do that, of course, today we have an array of splendid speakers, established business people, and with international careers and so on, highlighting the right things that we believe Serbia has to offer, and showing basically all the good vibes that there are in the Serbian digital scene. The timeliness of this event today, I believe, is nothing short of perfect, with the trade agreement just signed weeks ago, as David and Andrew were kind enough to mention, which gives basically the frame for the future cooperation. It aligned almost £700 million, and more money of there for financing projects in the country are guaranteed. To cut a long story short, and without any further ado, I will now briefly introduce the 6 speakers that will join me today, and then we kick off. Firstly, in order of their appearance today, Mr. Nebojša Đurđević, CEO at Digital Serbia, initial full professor at Faculty of Technical Sciences at University of Novi Sad. Milan Simić, CEO at EneTel Solutions. Nataša Škrbić, project coordinator and business analyst at Digital Serbia Initiative, handling startup ecosystem. Marija Ilić, president of the board and one of the co-founders of Serbian Gaming Association. And lastly, but not least, Mr. Vukobratvoić, executive director at Razor Communications. To begin with, I present to you with great pleasure Mr. Nebojša Đurđević. He is the CEO at Digital Serbia Initiative. Hello, Nebojša. How are you?
Hey, Filip. Thank you for having me. Pleasure to be here.
Perfect. Just briefly, to be kind on you, you are a very experienced manager with 20 odd years of international experience in electronic payments and fintech. You worked for Australian public companies spanning 4 continents. For Payments Canada, you modernized very complex systems, I must say. When I heard of it, I had to double check, handling $200 billion daily. But I must say it's okay, it's only Canadian dollars. But joke aside, it's very good to have you back in Belgrade for the last 2.5 years or so, since you've been heading Digital Serbia Initiative, an organization of 30 plus of best-in-breed Serbian companies trying to boost the entire ecosystem towards digital economy and raising awareness and basically raising the whole business environment in the country. Once again, thank you for joining us. I would like to begin with commenting some of the things for our attendees and tell us more about the digital sector landscape basically in Serbia. What is going on? As you speak, I will be sharing the slide to kind of illustrate what you're talking and showcase some of the figures. So please make things closer to our attendees.
Thank you. Actually, I can build on what Andrew already said because he provided some excellent background on what's happening in the digital ecosystem and in the IT sector in Serbia. So with respect of some of the numbers, it's kind of good to highlight that the IT or ICT sector really experienced a tremendous growth over the last several years, pretty much with the exports growing at the 25% per year. And the last year, basically, they exceeded 1.3 billion euro. We have a workforce in IT sector, which is about 30,000 IT specialists that work in more than 2,000 companies. Now, aside from those numbers, I would actually like to highlight a few key elements that actually lead into the opportunities for cooperation with the companies or with the Serbian digital ecosystem. The first one is talent pool, as mentioned earlier. Basically, we have the education system that has very strong tradition in engineering. So the current generation of senior engineers really is equipped with deep tech and math knowledge and expertise, which is providing an excellent talent pool for deep tech sectors that we have today, like artificial intelligence, data science, blockchain, etc. Also, there were recent reforms in the last few years that were done in Serbia in the education system, where we are really leading, I would say, globally. So, for example, the programming is mandatory from grade 5 until grade 12 for all students, where they're basically very early on starting with textual programming, mainly in Python programming language. And the concept behind this is that the digital economy requires talent, regardless of whether they will be professionals in biology, chemistry, political science. They need to have that basic understanding of information technology and algorithms in order to look for innovation and application of digital technologies in their own domain. Also, as part of those reforms, specialized IT streams have been introduced in high schools, also providing very advanced curriculum for students actually who want to choose IT as their profession. And also worth mentioning is that the multidisciplinary approach in education has also been highlighted, where over the last couple of years, multidisciplinary master programs were introduced, combining things that were not done before, like the leading tech disciplines with business knowledge, and also now basically arts and programming to drive the talent supply for the gaming industry that we are very strong in. So all of this creates this potential with respect to the talent pool, which is essential for further growth and prosperity of the digital ecosystem. The other area is also the improvements in the business environment with the incentives that the government is providing. So, for example, the companies that are doing R&D in Serbia enjoy a double deduction for all R&D expenditures. And also there is the IP box regime, which basically means that for all the revenue derived from IP developed in Serbia, there is only 3% corporate income tax, which makes it really very competitive. And also there are various tax credits for investors, whether they are corporations or private investors investing in innovative tech startup companies. So all of this creates really opportunities, I would say, in three areas for cooperation. One is for international companies to actually open R&D centers in Serbia. And we have great examples like Microsoft Development Center, FIS has very strong development center. Epic Games, the largest gaming company, acquired Trilateral, which is a company in Serbia, which now leads their digital humans technology globally. Nutanix acquired Frame for cloud computing, etc. So that's definitely one area that creates great opportunity based on value, quality versus cost ratio that Andrew mentioned. The second area is for actually companies who have R&D projects that requires engineering talent, because we know that globally there is a big shortage, and they can find actually partners, companies that provide services in Serbia in terms of development services for solving complex problems. There are some interesting examples there as well. So for example, one of our companies, which is also a member of Digital Serbia Initiative, cooperates fairly closely with the VC community in Silicon Valley, where when the VCs make substantive investment in a startup, because of the technology risk, if they solve deep tech problems, they actually give them the list of companies that they need to engage and hire to help them with the development. And for example, we have companies in Serbia that have those arrangements. And this specific company actually developed the glasses for astronauts that go out into the space. So instead of, in order to control the robotic arms, they're doing that just by moving their basically eyes to pull out drop-down menus, etc. So NASA selected them to do that project. So it's really not a cheap skilled labor anymore. It's high quality, talented workforce that provides great value for the services and quality that they deliver. And finally, just to mention the third area for potential cooperation is actually startups. We have very vibrant startup ecosystem. My colleague Natasha will drill down on that later on. And there is also, there is a talent pool. There are very successful startup companies who are leaders globally in their areas, and also there is a national strategy being developed for accelerated development of the startup ecosystem that creates great opportunities for foreign founders to come in and either find partners to establish startups, to start startup companies in Serbia, or to basically make the combination of having the parent startup company in another jurisdiction and subsidiary that actually does the development in Serbia.
Yeah, thank you very much. You made just all the perfect examples, really, because I think there have always been strong relations to Silicon Valley and US scene in general, partially due to the outflow of talent from here straight to Silicon Valley, but we see as a trend, as a very positive trend in recent years, people coming back, bringing their knowledge, bringing their businesses back, but also establishing all these relations, business relations between US and Serbia. And I think, you know, with the UK being a financial stronghold, this should be like probably the next best focus for us. Just briefly, from your position of being at the head of the Digital Serbia Initiative, working with the government and businesses, how do you see the goals and the role basically in the near-term future, briefly.
Yeah, just briefly, Digital Serbia initiative is a non-governmental, not-for-profit organization founded by the leading digital players in Serbia. It has more than 30 members today that come from different sectors relevant for the development of the digital ecosystem. Companies there would be tech companies like Microsoft, Google, Nordeus, Trilateral, EneTel, etc., as well as PwC, because we are targeting global markets, so those global strategies are important, etc., etc. The goal of Digital Serbia initiative is to ensure that in the next 5 to 10 years, Serbia leverages this historic opportunity with digital industrial revolution and develops strong digital economy based on knowledge and innovation with high added value, rather than to be marginalized in low value add manufacturing economy. So within that, our role is to take a strategic view of the digital ecosystem and see what are the strong points that we can use as levers to create even better output, but also to see what are the gaps and the weak points that we have to close. And within that, we actually develop programs in the areas of education, startup ecosystem development, and also legal and regulatory framework to create a better environment for doing digital business. We are indeed quite well cooperating with the government, bringing the ideas to them with respect to what they can do with the policy. And in a way, based on our membership that we have, we are driving that alignment between private and public sector in order to advance digital economy.
Very good. Very good. Thank you very much, Nebojša. As we are setting the table today, basically introducing the whole environment in our country, I believe this was just the perfect start, what you delivered today, and hopefully there will be plenty chances more to talk on this in detail. Thank you very much. One of the things that Nebojša mentioned as a key driver, and something that I believe is very much worth emphasizing, are the steps that have been secured in the domain of education. Not only at the high level, but since the very beginning. To me, it kind of indicates the trend, the idea for a longer term period, and the overall planning. So basically, we have some excellent first steps in the elementary schools onwards to secondary school, and then, of course, for the higher education. And today with me, with great pleasure again, I introduce full Professor Dejan Vukobratvoić, professor at the Faculty of Technical Sciences in Novi Sad, University of Novi Sad, who's done a lot of really amazing things, I think, over there with his students and his PhD candidates and etc., tackling all kinds of wireless communication, Internet of Things, mobile edge computing, wireless multimedia delivery, and so on. Additionally, as a bonus today, Dan has strong relations with UK as well, because he spent his postdoc studies over there and was a research fellow at the University of Strathclyde in Glasgow. So Dejan, thank you for joining me today. A very warm welcome to you as well. It's great to have you from Novi Sad today, because Novi Sad managed to establish itself as a very strong focal point for all the things that we are talking about today, even though it's fairly significantly smaller place than Belgrade, but still has so many successful stories. I will now share the screen again, and we will talk more on the slide on giving us figures on when it comes to education. I have two sons back home, or back in school, I'm not sure where they are right now, but they're in elementary school and they already have taken their first steps in terms of programming, learning Scratch. The older one is already doing Python and so on. So please, can we kick off by starting with these early days, and then please go on towards the universities, high schools, and so on to give the insight into this. I can't hear you, sorry. Just a moment more. Okay, perhaps we switch on to the next speaker, and please, host, if you can check with Dejan, try to, I don't know, my idea was the Bluetooth. Anyway, no worries, this will be fixed. We'll come back later on to Dejan. In the meantime, I would like to introduce the next speaker for us. It's Mr. Milan Simić. If we can have him next to me. Okay, this is the familiar face in Serbian and regional IT scene. Milan is the CEO at EneTel Solutions, a software development company, but also partner of many global companies. And I would like to tackle the theme of software development in Serbia that we've seen, as has previously been mentioned, which has been a traditionally stronghold here in our country. And we've seen so many good companies, global companies, opening their R&D branches and development branches here in Serbia. Briefly, just a few words on Milan. Milan is, well, he's my neighbor. He's the person I like to have beer with. But apart from that, Milan is very experienced C-level manager. For more than a decade, he's been the CIO in the largest telecom in the country, handling millions of euros of IT investments. Has done very well in this respect, and as I said, is probably one of the most familiar faces in Serbian and regional IT scene, and now is a successful CEO at EneTel Solutions, our software development company. Milan, welcome. I hope we can hear you. Very good, perfect. Sunny weather behind you. That's a new dawn is rising for Serbian ICT. Can you please, let's begin with commenting on Serbia's ICT sector. What do you think Serbia's ICT sector can offer to the ICT ecosystem?
Except this sunny weather almost the whole year, I believe that my predecessors already said some things, and I will just shortly repeat some of them in order to make the clear picture what are the main things that Serbian ICT ecosystem can offer to the global environment. It's at the beginning, and maybe the most important thing is quality labor. Excellent engineers and growing talent pool. My predecessors already mentioned the number of engineers, the number of talents, the percentage of highly skilled labor. We are talking about 60% and more of really highly skilled labor in whole labor pool. We are talking about more than 400,000 of students on different universities, and at least 20% of them are in the areas that are connecting to ICT and actually that are part of ICT. Second thing that are really important are corporate environment. We are talking about really competitive corporate taxation models. We are talking about regulatory framework that support ICT companies. Then Belgrade is on good location. It's easily accessible. Belgrade and the whole Serbia have modern infrastructure, and our labor is not only actually highly skilled in engineering, but also they are really proficient in English. Maybe 90% of whole labor in ICT have used the English as business language, and even more than 10% using at least two languages during their business day, which is really important and open some actually new areas in which together with Serbia, we can, Britain and Serbia can open even a third market. Because of all of this, some really big companies open their competence centers and offices in Belgrade, and Nebojša already mentioned some of them, and I will just emphasize that Microsoft developed some part of Asia in Belgrade. They actually Bosch developed some parts of their smart home solution in Belgrade, that Schneider Electric developed a smart grid solution that control power supply even in Silicon Valley in Belgrade. So we can switch off Silicon Valley from Belgrade if we want, but of course.
But we don't want to do that.
We want to do that, yes. SAP have development center for their CRM in Belgrade with a few hundred of developers. Nebojša already mentioned Nutanix, and I would just add that Simić also have their competence center in which they develop their automation and utility solutions in Serbia. Serbia have good tradition and long tradition of system integration companies, which develop their also traditional competencies needed in IT that can provide the, let's say, end-to-end solution in different areas such as the digital transformation. And there are wide and deep competencies for Western companies such as solutions such as Cisco, IBM, Microsoft, SAP, and Salesforce.
Very good. Now, can we tackle a bit what are the main trends that you see here in Serbia? Over here, we see some figures, if you can briefly comment on that one.
So just like all the other Eastern European countries, and just like Andrew already said, we started as an outsourcing destination. In the meantime, everything changed. As you can see, the European Innovation Scoreboard for Serbia is really high. We are in, let's say, upper part of this list. Also, Serbia is on good position if you're talking about Global Innovation Index. And it's all connected to the talent index that Andrew already mentioned. As a result, today, more companies are working on products and smart solutions than on traditional outsourcing. And some of the products are even globally present, such as Fishing Booker, which is a solution developed in Serbia, some kind of, let's say, Airbnb for fishermen.
This is the example, sorry to interrupt, this is the example that I always love to emphasize because it basically shows what can be done. I mean, it's a kind of a booking system for luxury fishing trips and so on, and made in Belgrade in Serbia, which doesn't even have sea basically, and it's #1 globally. So it's like a perfect example, I think, for such things. There's the Strawberry Energy. These guys are working in UK market.
Yes, you know them. Maybe you even powered your phones on some of their benches in London.
Exactly.
They're really, they're actually covering, I believe, 2 or 3 different English cities at the moment. And the third one is Haiku. Haiku is the result of, let's say, good competencies in traditional system integration with new digital services. It's a multi-cloud orchestration platform which are used by a lot of, let's say, lot of big traditional companies, and it's better known in B2B area, but it's well known in the United States.
This was just to highlight basically that some of these names may already be familiar to our attendees today and may have not known that these originated from Serbia. To wrap it up, Milan, please, imagine that you and I are 2 tech investors sitting in Shoreditch or Hoxton or East London looking to invest in ICT company. Would you go for Belgrade, and for what reasons?
Yes, first, Financial Times, according to Financial Times, city of Belgrade is city of the future. There are a lot of reasons for that one, and I believe that a lot of them is connected to good quality of the ICT products that we can create here, and that's created here. Then the environment, regulatory framework and environment, good supportive environment for the new companies that want to invest in IT. And of course, let's say this is South Europe. We do everything with a lot of feelings and with a lot of energy. So we care. Yes. When we focus on something, we can be really good.
Thank you very much, Milan, for everything that you said, and I think you made the right point. I believe we can go back now to Dejan.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Excellent. Sorry about this. We always think that we control the technology, but sometimes it's other way around.
Yeah. This is just to show that we are just flesh and blood. Okay, Dejan, not to lose any time, please. I will go now to asking you on funding, number of students, professors and researchers, Horizon projects, things like that. Can we elaborate more on that? I will share the slide, and we can then talk on that and the connection of science and business, basically, R&D, products, services, and so on. Please.
As we put some numbers on this slide, in terms of the number of researchers, actually Serbia is, very strong, let's say, regional power. The number here, actually roughly 17,000, is only showing researchers which are fully funded to do research on Serbian institutes or similar institutions. They are publicly funded, but they do not take into account, for example, myself or academic members at the universities. So if you take into account, all the academia, the number is actually many-fold larger. Dominant percentage of these researchers are in the domain of science, technology, and engineering. And we are very proud of the fact that actually more of the 50% of these numbers are actually women, which is Serbia is among the leading countries in Europe in this respect. And the very interesting thing is that if you see the number, how much is invested into research in Serbia, it's actually less than 1% of GDP, which is still below the European standards. But the link here from Times Higher Education in the UK shows that we are actually a very strong outlier among European and worldwide countries in terms of how much do you get from actually each pound invested. So basically the research production is really punching over its weight in terms of how much do you get in terms of, objective metrics like the published papers and similar stuff. When you normalize that with the amount of money invested. So this really shows that the research system is actually quite efficient, and the research system actually contributed a lot to the development of this ICT scene. The number of students, as you can see here, is now roughly 210,000 across Serbia. Almost 40% of that is in STEM fields. And I would just compare it to 2010. In 2010, it was like 180,000. So it's more than 10% growth. While on the other hand, the population is declining. So obviously, the number of enrolled students is growing, which is really good. A large fraction of these students are actually going to STEM fields, which is again part of the government strategy. And this is evident in every in every number. So we also see the number of study programs increasing with engineering and artificial intelligence and similar fields.
Exactly, and with some really innovative approach. I believe we have a master for blockchain now. It's at one of the universities, I believe. It really diversified and got more contemporary. Can we just now tackle briefly the key thing that you see the impact that higher education has on the ICT ecosystem development in the country? If you can comment on that one. You've already mentioned compared to the last decade, the spin-offs, etc. And on top of that, how do you see the future, the outlook with all the technology parks, AI Institute, Biosense Institute in Novi Sad, collaborations, which is probably the key buzzword and not only the buzzword of the 21st century. Can you give us something on that?
So if I go back to this influence of academia and research to ICT industry back in last 2 decades, I find really two important things to emphasize. So first one is that, ICT sector pretty much emerged from the scratch and from the it's self-initiated in Belgrade, in Novi Sad. And if you trace all these big companies now, you can always go back to some groups close to the some of the universities in Serbia, either by students or by professors. So people mentioned, for example, Schneider Electric DMS. I mean, 20 years ago, it was a group of 10 people here at our department, and now this is a company of more than 1,000 people. So a good thing is that the ICT sector is pretty much self-built. It was not built through, let's say, accession funds of European Union. And in that sense, it is quite robust. And I would say it's quite resilient because, all these people had to go through a really tough period. And I would, on the other hand, I would kind of put the evolution of this IT sector into two stages, maybe 20. You clearly see the change, like the phase change from outsourcing to the mindset of let us do something. Let's try to do something our own. Let's not just do outsourcing. And at the academia side, we see that because like 20 years ago, company, they didn't have anything to talk with us. And now they are coming, they're knocking at our doors and they are interested in what we are doing and how can these kind of things can be commercialized. So this is very nice thing. The other thing is obviously the governmental impact and establishment of first science and technology parks. We have now 5 science and technology parks across the country. I'm now sitting in the building of one of such park, and this is really fantastic environment and fantastic infrastructure. Besides that, we have several emerging institutes. So one of them you mentioned is Biosense Institute, really doing fantastic work in ICT, in agriculture, ecology, and similar fields.
Getting some of the international funding already before.
They are absolutely fantastic in Horizon funding. They have, I think they are running more than 30 Horizon projects at the moment and extremely successful in this domain. And the AI Institute, which I believe will be the jewel of this crown, is just currently being established. It will be in this same building I'm sitting in. And we are all looking forward to see this institute grow in the next couple of years.
Okay, Dejan, thank you very much. It's great to hear that because it's not only present, it's also about the future. And I think, the right steps have been taken in this direction. Thank you very much again, and looking forward to talk to you again next time. As previously has been mentioned, the startup ecosystem is something that is very much worth looking at. Our scene now, the startup scene in Belgrade is much comparable to those of Bucharest and Warsaw, while at the same time quite bigger than the one in Budapest. And probably there is no better person to talk about this than brilliant Nataša Škrbić. Nataša, hello. Great.
Thank you, Filip. Hello.
Perfect. Nataša, once again, to reintroduce you, you are the project coordinator and the business analyst at Digital Serbia Initiative, dealing with the startup ecosystem, but also more importantly as well, on the topic, you are heading this government working group that deals with startups, right? This will be shown on the slide just about now. So probably the best person to talk to about this. The fact that what I like about startups, basically, and talking about them, is that it basically is the kind of the indicator of the vibrancy of the market, I think, because it gives the entrepreneurship climate and so on. So please, let's go through that. Very much worth mentioning. I will not forget this. I wrote it down. You have a master in London School of Economics at London School of Economics. So again, very, very nice connection to London and UK for today. So please, to begin with on the startups, it's a quite young scene, right? What can you tell us on how it's developing and what would you say are the key characteristics? And as before, I will share the slide as well.
Thank you, Filip, and hello to everyone listening. It is a real honor to present our interesting and very vibrant ecosystem to you. And as Filip said, as a recent graduate from the LSE, it's even more nice to talk to people from the UK. Despite being very young and still in the first phase of the startup ecosystem lifecycle, our ecosystem is actually quite mature and it is growing very fast. What I like to say is that our startup ecosystem, if our startup ecosystem were a child, for a 10-year-old, it speaks quite a few languages and plays at least 3 sports. So it is quite advanced. According to the Startup Genome Research, which you can see on the slide, there are approximately 300 startups in our ecosystem, but that is only for Belgrade and Novi Sad and not for all the cities, which is consistent with the average for the activation phase and comparable to other cities in the region, as Filip mentioned before. Also, as you can see, the estimated value of the ecosystem is $502 million. However, I must note that the Startup Genome focuses on externally verified information, such as publicly shared data. And that means that they do not calculate all the bootstrapped startups or those startups that did not disclose the information on their revenues or on their acquisition costs and so on. So for example, we have Nordus, which you must have heard of, with more than $500 million in lifetime revenue, but they are a private company, they are self-funded, so they're not in this calculation. Also, we have many startups that were acquired for undisclosed amounts. So what we can actually say is that the real value might be almost 3 times higher and over $1 billion. Then regarding these top 10 affordable talent, which is in the slide, well, Nebojša and Dejan and all the others already mentioned our impeccable engineers, and they are the ones who add special value to all our startups, and they enable them to create world-class solutions using the latest technologies. However, Serbian startups need support in reaching the global market, given that the local one is quite small and often saturated, and also both customer and corporate behavior is quite different across the world and in Serbia. Hence, we have multiple examples of startups that create diverse international teams in order to diversify their skill set and amplify their chances of success. I guess that what one can say about fintech in UK, you can also say about blockchain and gaming in Serbia. So I would leave the gaming part to Maria because there is no one who would describe that ecosystem better than her. But about the blockchain, it's quite interesting. It became quite popular in the last years. And Serbia is one of the top 5 countries in the world for blockchain developers and has many product-oriented blockchain startups. I will mention a few of them, out of which some of them even have very high ICOs. So those are MobileGo, Origin Trail, MVP Workshop, Blinking, and others which you can Google, or also I think that you're using some of them, their solutions, even when you don't know it. And these figures that Filip showed do speak in favor of the ecosystem, but there is also some specific energy in the air here in Serbia, which makes you feel that the ecosystem is waking up and blooming, and the ecosystem is developing rapidly, which means now is the perfect opportunity for first-comers and for early-comers to come in and join the sectors of startup support and investment. And as Nebojša said, the DSI is doing its best to support the ecosystem building and everyone interested in it.
How can you comment on that aforementioned startup ecosystem development through the lens of this national strategy on the startups that is supported by the government and that you are part of?
Well, the mere fact that the government recognized startup ecosystem as relevant is telling us that the startup ecosystem is now big enough for the government to notice it. But also we are very delighted that the government shows its dedication to the ecosystem development by introducing this strategy and by including industry and civil society as relevant stakeholders in that process. In the last years, we as a country focused very much on public sector digitization, but we also introduced numerous tax incentives for both startup founders and investors. And now the strategy aims to accelerate the growth of the startup ecosystem because it has been growing, but we want it to be faster and stronger. So what we aim to do with the strategy is to increase the number and quality of startups, to close the funding gap, and to improve local and global connectedness so that we can create an ecosystem that will support over 1,000 startups and encourage many more to be more entrepreneurially minded. And what the DSI is doing, actually, Nebojša is the president of the working group, and we as an organization are coordinating its work. So we have 38 members from private and public sector, and we have consulted with over 100 stakeholders, and we plan to do even more in the next 2 months before we end the draft. And the specific areas that we will deal with in the strategy are in the areas of business environment improvement, closing the early stage funding gap, creating the whole investment value chain. And I guess the most notable things there are creating the co-funding mechanisms where the state will match private investment, but also creating the fund of funds which will match VC assets and partly de-risk their investments. And thirdly, we want to introduce more support programs for startups, especially in the niches where we have high potential. And we also want to strengthen the existing organizations that we have. And last but not least, of course, we will focus more on education, even though you've heard a lot about it. And I know it sounds impressive, but we want it to be even better. And also we will focus on entrepreneurship promotion and raising awareness about the startup entrepreneurship. So I guess to answer the question, you can expect a lot and a lot of people working on it, a lot of exits and acquisitions, and hopefully unicorns, and a lot of new mechanisms to support both founders and investors and organizations.
Thank you very much for that. I think, you know, the whole enthusiasm of the scene was so evident during your presenting and your talking. Honestly, I firmly believe in this, and I think it's the future, not only, I mean, the startups and the companies, but of the entire economy here in our country. Thank you very much, really. Thank you. It was excellent, and you gave me the right intro for another brilliant person that we have in line today. As has been said, it has been recognized by San Francisco Startup Genome. Gaming has been recognized as one of the key pillars of the Serbian scene, and it has been for quite a while. There have been some really successful dream come true stories coming from Serbia. Again, things have been done, I would say, in a mature way, because we've seen in recent years at universities master programs going straight towards gaming. And I like the whole ecosystem because it's combining two kinds of talent at the same time. One is on the technology side, and another one is more on the artistic side, which I find rather beautiful. It's worth saying, probably we all know this, but I keep repeating this because it's incredible that globally gaming industry makes more money than those industries of film and music combined. So enough said on this. To turn on the lights towards Marija Ilić. Marija Ilić is probably the best person to talk to about this in Serbia when it comes to gaming, because Marija, apart from having co-founded a very successful gaming company, is also co-founder and recently elected president of the board of Serbian Gaming Association. Marija, welcome. Welcome to this webinar. It's great to have you here. As with previous speakers, I will be sharing the slide. For this particular one, I used the data that I found in the recently issued report by Serbian Gaming Association, which I invite everybody really to go through. It's an excellent document, very fun to read, and with some really nice figures and then nice surprises. To begin with, how would you describe the Serbian gaming industry ecosystem in an overall?
Thank you, Filip, for the great introduction and for having me. I'm thrilled to be here today, so thanks once again. So basically, I think that I won't exaggerate if I say that the Serbian gaming industry is actually a synonym for the progress and growth at the moment. So while the Serbian market is still very young, and we had a bit later start comparing to, for example, Polish gaming market, which is the most successful in emerging Europe, we already have clear signs that we are heading in the same direction. So as you mentioned, as one of the founders of the Serbian Games Association, I actually had the first-hand experience of seeing the actual ecosystem changes. And when the SGA was founded, it was a bit over 3 years ago. Our primary goal was to create the best possible conditions for the teams and the individuals for making great games here in Serbia. Also, we wanted to give them a better starting positions for competing globally and to develop talent and creativity within the sector. So we also needed to create a value for the potential members, which made it a bit not easy, and also to gather and deserve in the first place all the help and support from our partners and friends and other nonprofits and businesses and the government representatives, etc. Now when I turn around and take a look at what has actually been accomplished in those years, both within the industry and the association itself, I'm really super proud to be a part of it. So
thank you. Can we go through these numbers?
Sure.
Perhaps I was too early with this slide, but can you guide us? I think some of the figures that we see here are very indicative of the trends in the gaming.
Yeah, sure. Basically the revenue as the most interesting number for everyone is here in the first place, but however, there are many parameters showing how significant this industry growth is that I have been trying to explain. So in 2020, our estimation is that approximately 120 million euros is generated in revenue, which gives us year-on-year growth of 20%. There is also around 120 teams and companies with more than 2,000 employees. And 1/3 of the employees are women, which is personally really important to me. And this is one of the significant topics we are working on recently, increasing gender parity and diversity in general. What is especially interesting and can be actually perceived as one of the best indicators of a maturing industry is the market differentiation between the teams or the companies. So following that, the majority of the companies here in Serbia, which are working in gaming industry, are more than 60% of them actually are working with their own original IPs. And the rest of this market is shared between the various kinds of services, art production, outsourcing companies, esports, tools development, etc. We have, Nebojša has mentioned previously that we have also became an interesting market for the foreign companies. So for example, a French giant Ubisoft Open Studio here in Belgrade, also like Nebojša mentioned, Trilateral from Novi Sad was 2 years ago, I think, acquired by Epic Games, an American developer and publisher. And there are many more interesting examples of how visible Serbian companies have become.
I recently, preparing some other presentation, I came across the data that, if I remember this correctly, 3/4 of all money paid for applications when downloading applications on mobiles, on Android and iOS, are games. 3/4, which is clearly indicating where the money is and where the market is, basically where the demand is. And in this respect, as the next question, I would like to hear more on the what do you see as challenges and opportunities at the same time in our local gaming industry from your perspective now presiding the board of the association?
Well, as with any emerging market, of course, Serbian gaming industry is not without obstacles or challenges. Some issues that we have been dealing with in the past have been solved, such as Google Merchant account and the local Serbian App Store. However, there is also plenty of work ahead. So some of the biggest challenges are, for example, bureaucracy. or so-called the red tape. There are plenty of really excessive and rigid regulations and standards and some formal rules which are really preventing decision-making and actions in this cutting-edge industry where the agility is a must. We don't have that. So this is really one of the biggest challenges. Also a double taxation problem with the US, which significantly lowers the income, especially for the smaller studios. This is really a huge challenge. Also, then there is the fact that the three main console manufacturers don't have not yet entered the Serbian market in an official capacity. Those are Microsoft, Sony, and Nintendo. And also one of the biggest challenges that the studios, smaller studios, are facing with is the lack of funding. So our industry is definitely on the radar of foreign investors who do bring financial opportunities and support to us for the local growth. So the next challenge actually for us as the association is to build a steady support for both developers and startups and the investors and enable this growth.
So in this respect, these are, well, basically the views on the future of gaming industry in Serbia. If these challenges, as you've said, were to be improved, then probably the whole boost and the whole potential of the gaming market in Serbia, the gaming production market in Serbia could come to light.
Exactly. And this is exactly why our primary goal as the association in the next years is going to be improvement of the incubation and acceleration processes together with what Nataša has already mentioned, education and talent development. And we are going to try to build a system that will boost the creation of new teams, of new leaders, new founders, and give them mentorship support for developing the products and businesses in general.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Maria, thank you very much. I'm absolutely sure, since, as I've said, this is setting the table webinar today, and British-Serbian Chamber of Commerce will organize several more, of course, webinars in near future. I'm absolutely sure that gaming is probably one of the key focal points, I believe, also on the UK side when it comes to terms of investing in our country. Thank you very much again for being with us today. Thank you. Lastly but not least, time flies when you're having fun. With me today is Vuk Mirković to aptly wrap things up together with me. Hello, Vuk. Thank you for joining us today. A couple of words on you. Yeah, just to unmute. Exactly. Please. Yeah, very good. With us today, Vuk Mirković, serial entrepreneur in creative industries, executive director at Razer Communications, at the same time water polo player and fresh fruit juice big fan. Always between Belgrade and Dublin, right? Joining me today to wrap things up. Thank you, Vuk. I believe I deserve a credit for this introduction. Thank you. I will be sharing the slide again, but this time it will be slightly different. We'll have like 4 key points that we will tackle now, just basically like headlines of what we will talk about. So let's begin with and touch upon the values of Serbian ICT from a service provider perspective. Try to bring us closer, like you've said on LinkedIn, to try to explain the difference between traditional kafana and international restaurant. Yeah. Take it off, please.
Okay. Yes, I would like to actually point out like key advantages of doing business in Serbia from a service provider perspective. So like business culture is in Serbia is actually consumer centric. It's really client oriented, and you won't find that that much elsewhere. So instead of basically arguing with a client or getting in a sort of a fight over something, the people here in business process understand the client side and are more focused on the client side than anything else. Besides that, the core understanding of consumer engagement principles is something that's really into DNA of any business organization around here. So it's really pro consumer setup that you will face here. Experienced labor with decades of exposure to global market is another thing to have in mind when thinking about Serbia and doing business in Serbia. But also new and modern infrastructure that's already in place and that's growing, like offices, business centers, infrastructure in terms of telco. All those things actually add on to a pretty positive business feeling and business environment.
If I may step in, sorry, if I may step in to highlight the telco infrastructure, since sure. this was what I used to do previously as a CTO of a telco. I think it's very important for our listeners to understand that basically half of all households in Serbia and more than half of all businesses in Serbia can have fiber optic internet as of tomorrow, and all 3 mobile operators in Serbia have 99% population coverage on the 4G and soon with 5G. So this is something that is basically there at the top level of any European country as a prerequisite for the digital business to boost and so on. Sorry, I had to briefly interrupt. Can we switch on now to comment on expectations versus reality? This is something that we've discussed previously. Expectations and reality coming from the UK clients, from your perspective.
Yeah, like the first thing is that communication, both written and oral, exceeds expectations. So it's English is as the guys before said, it's like 90% of not just IT people, but people you meet on the street, like in the shop. They will be able to communicate in English. They will be able to find a way to communicate, to understand you and to provide feedback in.
Indeed, they will.
Definitely. That's one thing. The other thing is the common culture, the pop culture. So we all grew up, with Mickey Mouse and Disney, and fell in love with Little Mermaid and all those characters and images. We had the same. We were not behind the Iron Curtain. We were actually on the edges of that Iron Curtain, but not under it.
Yeah, pop culture is the same for all.
Yeah, but the other really interesting thing is the aesthetics. So it's the aesthetics around are again, I guess, due to the history and due to the fact that Belgrade and Serbia is some sort of melting pot, for the region and for Europe. The aesthetics are quite high. People do nice things, and they somehow tend to create something beautiful, not just functional, opposed to maybe some other places.
With the nice touch.
Yes, and but another thing that's definitely comes as a shock is sort of rates. So as guys mentioned before, we're not cheap as anywhere else in the world. Like you have a have a kind of a global price now for the the development hour, the developer hour, or whatever. And this
was nicely touched by David and Andrew at the very beginning. I think
exactly.
that was one of the key points. But it's not the point just the price; it's what you get for the price that you pay.
Exactly.
Sometimes you think, oh, this is great, this is so cheap, but then you get nothing in the end in return.
Exactly.
Can we say something now on what do you think companies should be looking for here when
when in Serbia, definitely are sort of a key thing to look for is the interconnected environment, and that's the real value of this place. So to have basically not just to have okay, IT guys or backend guys, server side guys doing something. It's the whole ecosystem that's in there. You can easily integrate on some payment provider to basically test drive your business, to sell it here and there, to actually move it. In my opinion, the key thing is to also engage with expats as a change agents.
I think this is the strong point. When we were preparing for this, and when you said expats as change agents, I think that's the real thing, because Serbian diaspora is in multitudes all across the globe, and most of the time these are highly skilled professionals, and we are already seeing the benefits of this interconnectedness with people abroad.
There's no better place to live, than Serbia, really. And I have friends, coming back from States, UK, coming back to live in Serbia, which is a great.
I was tackling Serbian diaspora, but also this is the trend that is going very lively in recent years, that people are coming to Serbia to work and to live here. Highly skilled professionals we're talking about. We mentioned, gaming beforehand. We know that some of these gaming companies over here have dozens of people coming from abroad, living in Belgrade now or in Novi Sad, enjoying their life and doing their professional business from here, from these neighborhoods.
Another thing I want to emphasize is that passion to fuel the work ethics. So it's that feeling that it's not your day-to-day 9-to-5 job. It's the fact that people here, if you got that passion with them, they will really outperform anyone. And that's, I guess, more of a kind of warm-blooded South nations kind of thing.
Okay.
But also hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Okay, but also the overall kind of management style around is more of a problem solvers than anything else. So it's more of a kind of people are again, due to history and due to decades of issues, wars, this and that. People are actually solving the problem, not whining about the problem.
I think this is the good point really to mention now, that this problem solving and management handling and so on. David was kind enough to mention that Britain and Serbia are basically leading the way when it comes to vaccination success, the high percentage of adults who have been vaccinated in our country and so on. And when I think about it, I think to a large extent, it's a huge success made by the IT community and basically, people who've done it. Because to bring things closer, just briefly, you go get your vaccine in numerous places all across Serbia. Beforehand, you get your SMS saying when to come and where to come. You have your email saying the same. You get the QR code for that. Once you're vaccinated, you get everything printed for you, sent to your email. You get your QR code. Soon we will be having these what's it called, like
Green Pass something, yeah.
Exactly. So I think this really, when in need, and this is the global need right now. The Serbian IT ecosystem in a way, or the people who were in charge of this, I think they got like the best marks for this. To wrap it up, because we are coming to the end of time now, could you give me your views on how to embrace the future here in Serbia? Lastly, give us just a couple of briefs.
Universities, educational centers, research centers to fuel up the R&D. That's one of the end of course education in general, but R&D as a service. Then e-government to provide more of a flex and cheap and efficient service for the business. and of course to get that more of that attitude for excellence, to be great instead of being big, since we're not big. We are 7 million of us, living in Serbia. One thing we can do is being great, and that's one thing for sure. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much, Vuk. You were standing, and this additionally emphasized your passion about the thing and so on. A big thank you really to all of our speakers today. A big thank you to all of you who attended. Big thank you to British-Serbian Chamber of Commerce who facilitated this event. I would now switch on to the Q&A section, and would ask, my fellow participants to switch on their cameras again. Okay. Statistics or outlook on the Serbian esports landscape. Not sure if this falls under the SGA's remit, but it would be good to know more about the competitive gaming landscape, events, teams, tech. I think, Maria, this is clearly for you, if you can answer that once again. So any statistical or outlook on the Serbian esports landscape?
Well, I don't have the data, to be honest. We do have esports as members of esports companies, as members of the SGA. One of the biggest companies, Fortuna Esports, is actually in the one of the board members, but I cannot give you statistics around it. Sorry. Maybe I can follow up. You can email me and I can follow up with the answer on that.
Okay, this one's interesting, perhaps for Dejan, maybe next time he visits UK. Technical education in Serbia has been a real success story. What advice would you give UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson in this area?
I hope you can hear me.
Yes.
We had some small discussion here, and I think actually what I really wanted to emphasize is the quality of secondary education system in Serbia. And it inherited a lot from former Yugoslavia, but many of the things have been improved in the meantime. And we can see that the universities from the input side, because these are the students that we are getting as the as the input. And the spectrum is really wide. So you really get, you also mentioned these specialized engineering and computer science schools. From there, you get a very wide pool of very practically oriented students who really want to do stuff. On the other hand, on the other end of the spectrum, we have this very strong mathematical gymnasia, like the one in Belgrade and all the other cities, who are strong in math Olympiads. And from there, you get really a talent for fundamental stuff. So from such a wide spectrum, you really get a good quality.
I would also say it's a combination of traditional approach and also boosting, basically having a plan around it.
But another thing that was really well emphasized in the answer is that actually the pool of students which are getting to this high quality STEM education is probably much wider than in the UK. And it is exactly among these people who see ICT now as maybe a shortcut to reach some higher than average salaries. It goes even to the elementary school that kids are now interested to do programming because they see that, programming jobs are well paid in Serbia nowadays.
Yeah, I fully agree. This one I suggest that Nebojša takes. This is submitted by email. What opportunities exist to leverage the new UK-Serbia trade collaboration to help leading Serbia tech companies in these sectors grow and gain venture capital to compete on the global stage? Do you want me to repeat?
No, I think I got it. Hold on one sec. I'm unmuted. Yes. Definitely one of the focus areas is to improve the early stage funding and funding of tech startups in Serbia. And with the UK really being one of the global leaders when it comes to anything related to financial services, fintech, and VC as well, I think this creates a great opportunity. Especially also we collaborate really well with a group of Serbian entrepreneurs who are entrepreneurs of Serbian descent It started originally in the US, but they also have a chapter in the UK. So all in all, I think there is a great opportunity in this area, definitely.
Okay. Another one, I would like to know about the wage competitiveness of the current Serbian market, as well as in your respective companies. Can it attract young professionals like myself who are educated abroad and wish to maintain the similar standard of living as you would have in the UK or other similar countries? Okay, Nebojša, take the word.
Yeah, I can comment, not really as someone who has a company, but we have leading tech companies among our members. And then I can tell you that, for example, a company like Nordeus has 1/3 of their employees who came from the leading players globally, from Canada, from UK, from the US, who actually came to live in Belgrade, and many of them actually moved whole families. Other companies as well are very successful in attracting talent. Belgrade is often compared with Berlin. They refer to it as a new Berlin in terms of the lifestyle that you can actually enjoy here. And with respect to the living standard, I would say also having direct experience by living in Canada for decades, and also staying at other places in main European tech cities, the actual standard of living, taking into account the cost of living and the salaries for talented people, actually Serbia and Belgrade is very competitive. The standard of living is probably higher than if you live in London, Toronto, New York, or other major cities that are very expensive.
I can give you the exact figure if that's a question.
Yeah, please.
Okay, it's half of the figure you're getting in, I don't know, UK or Ireland. Half of that figure you will have the same lifestyle in Belgrade, probably even better food.
This is why you spend more time in Belgrade than in Dublin, I guess.
Well, yes.
Okay, I think I have exhausted all the questions that have been submitted in chat or otherwise, just not to, yes. Okay, if so, once again, really thank you to all participants. Thank you to David and Andrew beforehand, and British-Serbian Chamber of Commerce. And of course, thank you all who attended this event. I very much enjoyed it. I hope you have too. You can find us all on LinkedIn. We will be more than happy to carry on with this conversation. As I said, we were just setting the table today, and there's plenty more to come. Thank you once again. Have a nice day wherever you are. Thank you.